operation. In accordance with the agreement made between the parties, Paul Gallagher, the Attorney-General, will be leaving his role. I believe that he has been one of the great Attorneys-General. The range and depth of his legal knowledge is unmatched. His drive in ensuring that legislation was drafted as fast and as well as possible has been critical to action in areas as diverse as controlling the pandemic to addressing climate change. Most of all, he has fulfilled the most important role which a government should seek from an Attorney-General. He has been direct and honest in his counsel, making sure that both the limits and possibilities of actions were understood. I thank him for his support, his advice and his service. O lehintam oige suskadi an lá tá nuvan, vi massagum agus gra o chriagum, de hevris na tanga goelge, agus da na codna sevra le, dar goltor dúkish na shunta. Ba frivléad agus an or vor dum, mar hishak na herden, bula le dini o gach cairn den tír seo, atá lárnach, gníomhach agus riachtanach sa ré nua bríomhre seo, a ceapim atá timpalaring, I lethús úsáid na gailge, ní hamháin in our scolanna, ach in an áhéal le húil na tíre. Ba bhfuil lomsam a bhór bhéchas a go bháil lo, as an ígris agus a bhain agus an frinimh gan Jordan don tanga agus don chultúr a Reintlum. In I theanta sin caithfidh mé creadúint agus aitheanta sa chóirt don ról a bhí ag na meán gailge agus an pobl I réimse na halíne chun ráló an uv céchó bríoch is a táim as na neisc agus as na cadrih le ling na nuachláin go léir agus córa an tíl le ghábhlíonn go leithin nuas. Is I ma aim agus mo chospóir leidir na neisc agus na ceangail seo a chaméid sna blianta atá roin. At the European Summit, which concluded yesterday, I was very thankful for the kind words of the leaders. In filling this part of the role of Taoiseach, I was at all times motivated to give voice to the very clear view of the vast majority of the Irish people that this is a European democracy and that the success of the European Union is a priority for us. With the support of the government throughout the last 2.5 years, I signalled to other leaders a renewed willingness of Ireland to strengthen the Union, to help it to be more urgent and ambitious in its work. Ireland has been to the forefront in promoting shared action in Europe on critical issues like creating new funding possibilities for economic recovery, insisting on the rule of law as a condition for all member states, and helping Europe to achieve energy independence based on sustainable energy supplies. Ireland will not stand on the sidelines as the destructive populism of the extreme right and left seeks to damage a union which has been central to so much progress in the past half-century. Europe's role in helping its citizens through the pandemic and becoming the world's leader in sharing vaccines is a testament to how our union remains strong and will continue to face down those who want to return to the days of destructive competition between states. And today we are living with the reality of a war against a European state by an imperial aggressor. The resolve of the Ukrainian people has been an inspiration, as has been the generosity of the Irish people in supporting them. This appalling war is the fault of one man, his government, and an ideology which seeks to destroy the very possibility of free democracy. The welcome which has been given to tens of thousands of refugees fleeing this war has been truly inspiring. It inevitably causes major pressures, but the values which are at stake are much bigger than the sacrifices which we must make while this assault on Ukraine is underway. Undoubtedly, one of the most important reasons why the Irish people have reacted with such strength in supporting Ukraine is because they remember our own struggle for independence. During my time as Taoiseach, the centenaries of many of the critical moments which shaped our modern history were commemorated. And these have included many events which were characterised by deep divisions. I believed it was important to engage in detail with these commemorations, to take the time to reflect on our past and how this influences our democracy. Our history has often been used to try to justify current actions. Many have promoted the idea that history is about choosing sides in a single continuous narrative. What this misses is the diversity and change which has been central to Irish identity from the earliest times. The great generation which secured our independence did not subscribe to an inflexible view of Irishness or our ambitions. The founding charter of our freedom, the Proclamation of 1916, is unique when compared to the many such documents which emerged out of what was the greatest period of nation building ever seen in Europe. This uniqueness was because it spoke of wanting to establish a democratic republic, a republic where the nation was defined as inclusive of different traditions, a republic which sought friendship and cooperation with others, a republic which demanded that all who served in its name do so with honour. This is a wonderful inheritance for us and an inspiration as we face the historic challenge of seeking to overcome division on our island. If there is one thing we should all be able to acknowledge, it is that if we genuinely believe in an Ireland which includes and serves all, then we must be prepared to build new bridges. We must be prepared to reach across divides and to do the hard work of learning to understand and respect each other far more than we have in the past. We must stop making assumptions about each other and get to know each other. That is why I've put such an emphasis on the Shared Island Initiative and why it has been established as a new unit with dedicated funding in the Department of Taoiseach. For the first time, the hard and vital work of building a detailed understanding of cross-border links and differences is being done. We are investing in links which bring people together and in innovation, which is the key to addressing the legacy of disadvantage left behind by the years of conflict. I want to thank the thousands who have participated in the Shared Island dialogues and the often very direct conversations involved, and also those who have developed the many Shared Island projects which are now underway. I've had the privilege, Ceann Comhairle, to hold this office because of my parliamentary party and the thousands of Fianna Fáil activists throughout the country. I want to thank them and my colleagues here in the Oireachtas. Each of us here draws on different traditions. For us, we continue to be inspired by the great generation who met 96 years ago under Constance Markievicz as chairperson to found our Democratic Republican Party. As I finish this term in office, I would like most of all to thank my wife Mary and our family, Micheál, Eva and Cillian, for their unfailing advice, support and encouragement, and the occasional criticism they have given me, and particularly Mary, who has always tried to keep me on time throughout my life. We have been blessed by the wonderful community of Cork, which has looked out for us and has given me the strongest possible reassurance that all would be well as I spent so much time away. Above all, my upbringing in Turner's Cross in Cork and the values it imparted and the love of my late parents has guided me throughout. Finally, Ceann Comhairle, I would like to say thank you to the members of the Dáil. We've had many very robust exchanges here, but I have never ceased to be honoured to be a member of one of the democratic world's oldest parliamentary chambers. We have much work ahead of us for the rest of this Dáil term. I look forward to this and to continue our service on behalf of the Irish people. God bless.
Thank you, Taoiseach. Our first business then is the nomination of Taoiseach, and I now want to receive motions, and I understand that Deputy Richard Bruton has a proposal to put to the House. Deputy Bruton.
Yes, thanks very much, Ceann Comhairle. I think it was Samuel Johnson who said that the Irish are a very fair-minded people. They never speak well of one another. And I think on most measures this House would be particularly fair-minded, but I think I detected a slight quiver in that fair-mindedness today with genuine warmth for the job that Micheál Martin has done as Taoiseach here. As we pass 100 years as a democracy, as you pointed out, Taoiseach Ceann Comhairle recently, we have a very proud record of sustaining democracy throughout a very, very difficult period. And perhaps today we have a more modern and a more discerning electorate than we've ever had before, and it has high expectations of politicians, and it demands the highest, and that is really important. When I entered this House, we had indeed rotating Taoiseachs between Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil. They changed nearly every 9 months, and every one was punctuated by a costly and difficult election, and it broke many of our colleagues here who wanted to contest those. Today we have a very different transition, and I think Micheál Martin has handed on his legacy in superb condition. His instinct for finding solutions in the face of COVID and then Ukraine, I think, have shown the quality of the leadership that he has offered. This is today the 15th time that I have been involved in the election of a Taoiseach, but it's the first one in which I've had the honour to make a nomination. And in my observation, the essential ingredients to do this job well are three things. You need strength of character, you need courage, and you need restless curiosity. And in my view, Minister Taoiseach Leo Varadkar has exactly those features. His strong character has been formed by being the proud son of an Indian father and an Irish mother, by being part of a family devoted to care as doctors and as nurses, and by his experience in 5 government departments in health, social protection, enterprise, transport, tourism and sport, and of course defence, before he then became the youngest Taoiseach ever at the age of 38. He has also demonstrated his courage and resilience time and again, most noticeably, I believe, in launching the campaign to repeal the 8th Amendment. He held his nerve in the high-wire Brexit manoeuvring that so much was at stake for our country and for our island. And he also provided reassurance as he led us on that very uncharted path after COVID, when seldom, if ever, an acting Taoiseach had to make decisions of such grave import. As a minister, too, I have felt the value of his restless curiosity and his foresight, because without him, we could not have had a national broadband plan, which I was proud to be a part of. Without him, we could not have had the first climate action plan in 2019. It could not have been put in place. And I think one of the important capacities of the power of someone holding the office of Taoiseach is to know when it is important to stretch people beyond their comfort zone, to take on challenges that perhaps they would prefer not to. And in both of those cases, he showed those capacities. And those capacities are going to be so important as we face really difficult challenges in the future. It was Bernard Shaw who said, "We are made wise not by the recollection of the past, but by the responsibility for the future." And Ireland is continuing to transform rapidly, but it's facing grave challenges that we all know about in this House. It's doing so at a time of enormous global uncertainty. And the challenge for the government in the remaining part of its term is to keep in harness together enterprise success, fairness in our society, and sustainability in our way of life. And no one of those can find enduring success without each of the other together. And it is that which the person taking on the role of Taoiseach must ensure. I believe that this government offers the right partnership to confront those 3 challenges. And I believe Leo Varadkar is the right person to step into the position as Taoiseach in the next phase of those challenges. So it's with great pride that I nominate for the position of Taoiseach in the name of Leo Varadkar.
Thank you very much, Deputy Bruton. I understand Deputy Eamon Higgins wants to second that proposal. Deputy Higgins.
I do indeed, Ceann Comhairle. Thank you very much. In 2020, as the COVID crisis first hit our shores, Leo Varadkar led our country through the most difficult months. He showed what a fine Taoiseach he was through his absolute focus on the well-being of our citizens, his clear plan to deal with the crisis, and above all else, his commitment to forming a government to lead. Tomorrow, people right across the world will be tuned in to the World Cup final to find out who the winning team is. But today, we reaffirm that winning team in Ireland. In Fine Gael, in Fianna Fáil and in the Greens, we have our winning team. Leo takes over as Taoiseach of an historic coalition, a coalition that shows how far we have come since the Civil War. It is testament to both party leaders that we are seeing the successors of these two sides share and pass on power. Today is an example of our country being at peace with its Civil War history, and today proves that coalition works. This day next week, a certain someone will leave the North Pole to deliver to boys and girls. And that's exactly what this government has done. Deliver. Delivered through challenges that were absolutely unforeseeable back in 2020. A global pandemic, a war on European soil, and a cost of living crisis. With strong, steady, stable leadership, we are navigating through these uncharted waters. A government which Micheál Martin has led so responsibly and with such compassion. A government which the Greens have ensured always operates through a lens of action on climate change. People want a functioning, responsible government that gets on with the work at hand, and that is exactly what this government has done. It supported businesses when they needed help most. It protected workers through groundbreaking legislation, and it delivered record employment against a global backdrop of uncertainty. Minister Heather Humphreys has delivered for rural Ireland. She's invested in communities across the island, and she has protected our most vulnerable and our over 70s. Minister Paschal Donoghue's €11 billion budget protected households, and his influence has put us at the centre of Europe. Minister Simon Coveney led us through the choppy waters of Brexit with a whole-of-Ireland approach. Minister Simon Harris has made third-level education more accessible and apprenticeships more attractive. And Minister Helen McEntee has been creating stronger, safer communities right across Ireland. Her second son, less than 1 week old, will shortly have lived through his second Taoiseach. He grows up in an Ireland that punches far above its weight on the international stage. An Ireland which offers opportunity, not just to our own people, but to those who want to call here home. It can be so easy to be blinded by the empty rhetoric of opposition politics that paints Ireland as a bleak country on the outskirts of Europe. Optimism is never the hallmark of opposition politics, but this opposition has been populist, pessimistic and divisive. Ireland is a reflection of its people, a nation of céad míle fáilte, of decency, of kindness, of a hard-working ethos and of fairness. It's our people that this government serves and that Leo Varadkar will lead as Taoiseach, and serve them he will. 28,000 new homes have been delivered this year and will continue to build more. You'll pay lower income tax next year than this, and we'll continue to put more money back in your pocket. Public transport costs have been slashed, and we'll continue to invest in our roads, our buses and our train lines. Childcare costs will be reduced next year, and we'll continue to invest in those early years. Hospital inpatient charges have been abolished, and we'll tackle waiting lists too. There are more Gardaí on our streets today than last year, and we'll always prioritise law and order. This government will continue to focus on reality, not populism, on hope, not pessimism, on unity, not division, because that is what leadership looks like. Ireland needs a leader that will provide stability and vision. He did that for us last time round, and I know that Leo Varadkar will do that for us again. It is my absolute honour, Leo, to second your nomination for Taoiseach of Ireland. I know you'll do our party, our country and our people proud. Good night and Boherlat.
Thank you very much, Deputy Higgins. Now we move on to contributions from the parties and groups, and we have 10 minutes available for each party and group. And according to the list before me here, we begin with Fianna Fáil.
And I'd like to share my time with Minister Micheál Martin. a ceann ar son 40 ina fáil, bhfuilm a dhéanú inis go mimid de réir an cho aontaithe danganathe ag an mhuil ag bhótáil ar son amnúcháin an tánaiste Leo Varadkar le dul os cóir an uachtaráin le ceappa go hiifig an Taoiseach. Seo cinenne agus gníomh táchtach déan lethach agus céim eile a léiríonn go fíor Healy-Rae, Chomantas agus dígris na drí 40 illig sa rialtas seo ar glár ibre agus aimimena aontaithe reinte a chríoch ar son bhuinter na hÉireann. At the start of this Dáil, the Fine Gael and Green parties negotiated a detailed and ambitious programme of action for the full duration of the Dáil's term. The formation of this government was unique for Ireland, but not internationally. It saw three parties with different traditions and priorities agree to work together. No party or deputy in this House has a mandate to claim to represent the views of all Irish people or to demand exclusive control of public policies for themselves. The distinguishing feature of centrist Democrats is the ability to respect differences, find points of agreement and to cooperate. And this is what we have done. The programme for government, which remains in place, and the arrangements which we are voting on today were put to free votes in our three parties. Within Fianna Fáil, every member received a copy of relevant documents and had an opportunity to participate in a widespread debate. The vote which we held was the largest vote ever held by an Irish political party, and the result was overwhelmingly in favour of this government. Today represents the first time in Irish history that there is a change in the office of Taoiseach, which was agreed well in advance and is supported by the membership of the parties involved. It reflects our shared commitment that each party be treated fairly in light of its mandate and that we build a government defined by cooperation. During the past 2.5 years, I've worked closely with Tánaiste Leo Varadkar and Minister Eamon Ryan. Our discussions have been open, honest and comprehensive. We've insisted on a constructive approach to the work of government. To be a government deputy in Dáil Éireann brings with it practical challenges, and I know that the often limited opportunities to contribute at key moments here in the Chamber can be a frustration. However, the opinions of those who do not hold office and those who they represent must be heard. I want to acknowledge the openness of the other party leaders in government to hearing and acknowledging the views of our deputies. Because of the system of cabinet committees which have been put in place, there is detailed consultation and debate about the full range of issues which come before government. I believe that this core respect has been a defining feature of the government, and it is one which will continue through our term. During the debate on the nomination of deputies for appointment as members of government, I will go into more substantial detail about our work over the rest of our term. It is important, however, to say that we are fully conscious of the challenges which our country faces and how they continue to change. The dramatic increase in inflation seen throughout the world because of Russia's war against Ukraine and the disruption of many supply chains is not an abstract economic concern. It is hitting people very directly and their ability to pay for essential items. As we showed in the budget, we are determined to keep helping people with this critical new challenge and addressing the deep impact of the pandemic in vital areas such as hospital waiting times and the construction of new homes will remain central to our agenda. We have restored our economy faster than any country in Europe, and we've helped people back to work. We have begun a new era in social and affordable housing and are implementing a comprehensive strategy to address all elements of housing provision. We have put in place action on the existential threat of climate change and the loss of biodiversity. We have begun the development of new health services in every part of our country. We have reduced class sizes, increased supports for children with special needs, and funded the largest investment programme in the history of Irish education, and have established a new Department of Further and Higher Education and Research. We've begun the expansion of childcare and the introduction of new direct state support with childcare costs. However, we've much further to go during the remaining period of our mandate. The reality of modern politics in Ireland is that there is a choice between those who work to exploit problems and those who work to solve them, between those who pretend that there are easy answers to even the most complex problems and those committed to the much harder work of action on many fronts. My party and the government we belong to will continue to use every day of our mandate to work on behalf of all the people, and when our programme is completed, I have no doubt that we will be in a position to show sustained progress on the issues which matter most to the Irish people. In supporting the motion to nominate Tánaiste Leo Varadkar, I want to thank him for his cooperation over the last 2.5 years and his dedicated work. The Government has worked under many enormous pressures, but we've succeeded in keeping our focus on moving our country forward. I look forward to maintaining this spirit during the rest of our term.
Thank you, Taoiseach. Minister McGrath.
Thank you very much, Ceann Comhairle, and I do at the outset wish to join with colleagues in conveying my own personal deepest sympathies to the family of the late Private Sean Rooney on their devastating loss, and to send my very best wishes to Private Shane Carney and his family as his battle continues today. Ceann Comhairle, today's proceedings are an historic occasion in the history of our nation. It is the first time during a Dáil term where the members of the House are being asked to approve the rotation of the office of An Taoiseach between two parties within government. It is symbolic of the diverse political landscape in which we now live and the maturity of the three parties who comprise this government. That it is being undertaken without either drama or rancour is indicative of the stability and the unity of this government. Since coming to office almost 2.5 years ago, the government has been charged with the responsibility of taking the country through a set of extraordinary global challenges: a once-in-a-century pandemic, a terrible war in Europe, and the consequential cost of living crisis facing our people. We have been deeply fortunate to have been led by a Taoiseach of the calibre of Micheál Martin. At so many difficult moments in the past couple of years, his integrity, experience and innate decency has shone through. When it came to work ethic, his commitment was absolute. When the government he led was faced with major decisions, his guiding principle was to do what was right for the country and for its people. And this was never more evident than during COVID-19. On the international stage, his commitment to multilateral cooperation and finding solutions through dialogue is widely recognised and valued. And I know that his wife Mary, Micheál, Eva, Cillian and all of his siblings and extended family, and indeed the community from which he comes, are so rightly proud of all that he has achieved as our Taoiseach. And on behalf of all of my colleagues in the Fianna Fáil Parliamentary Party, our party members all over the country, and also on behalf of so many ordinary members of the public, of every political persuasion and of none who respected his approach, I want to say thank you to Micheál Martin for being an outstanding Taoiseach of this country. I also wish Deputy Leo Varadkar all the very best as he embarks on his second term as Taoiseach. As leader of the government, he will have our full support, and I know the support of our coalition partners, the Green Party, as well, as we work collectively to tackle the issues that are most important to the people that we are privileged to serve. First and foremost, building the homes our people need: social, affordable, cost rental and private homes. And this is a top priority for all of government, and we will leave no stone unturned to make tangible progress over the next 2 years plus. Thankfully, the speed and the depth of the recovery of the Irish economy after COVID has surpassed all expectations. Today, we have more people working at any point in our country's history and an unemployment rate at a historic low. Last September, Minister Paschal Donoghue and I introduced a budget with €11 billion of new measures, primarily aimed at supporting businesses and supporting households through this exceptionally difficult period of high inflation. We did this while not taking on any additional borrowing as a country, and committing €6 billion to a National Reserve Fund and projecting a budget surplus this year and next. In addition, over a series of 3 budgets, we committed record investment in housing, health and childcare, more teachers and SNAs, historic levels of public capital investment to build more schools, hospitals and better public transport. Every day in this chamber, we hear more calls for more investment, more spending, and this is only possible where we have a strong economy and well-managed public finances. That is why this government will continue to support business, support jobs and manage the nation's finances with care. As an open economy, we are not immune from the global economic downturn, but we are better positioned than most to withstand its effects. While politics in many countries has been beset by the populism of the left and the right, I believe that Ireland has prospered through careful implementation of policy that has been based on evidence. The principles that underpin this coalition for the first half of its term, trust, mutual respect, parity of esteem and good personal relationships, will continue, Ceann Comhairle, in the second half. At a time of such uncertainty and turmoil in the world, Ireland needs a strong and a stable government that works day in and day out for the people of our country. With the support of this House, that is the commitment that we make to the Irish people today. Thank you, Ceann Comhairle.
Thank you, Minister McGrath. Now, Minister Eamon Ryan, please.
Thank you very much, Ceann Comhairle. Today is an important day. For 100 years we have operated as a democracy, and it's important today that we follow the constitutional order in electing a Taoiseach and a new cabinet and government. It's a new cabinet. The metaphor I was using, it's like half-time, and the captain's armband will be passed from one to the other, but it will be a similar team. And one thing I know and absolutely certain for sure, that Micheál Martin, Tánaiste Micheál Martin, will be running out on Monday morning with the rest of us, determined to do everything we can to serve the Irish people. I spoke in the convention centre 2.5 years ago about the qualities he had that I believed would make him a good Taoiseach, and I believed any assessment, historic or even current, will prove that foresight to be correct, or that expectation to be correct. We have work to do. We retain and double down on the programme of government that we wrote 2.5 years ago in a time of real crisis. One person, before I continue though, I want to remember, as the Taoiseach said, who will not be continuing that team, but has, I think, done an incredible job, was the outgoing Attorney-General, Paul Gallagher. We were joking in Cabinet on Tuesday, was it, the Minister for Foreign Affairs was saying, God, every time we get to Security Council, the world's in crisis. The Cuban Missile Crisis, 9/11, the war in Ukraine now in the last 2 years. And I was joking, saying that, well, God, every time Paul Gallagher takes the Attorney-General's office, he has to deal with crisis, the financial crisis. He served this state in a way that I believe was hugely significant for the benefit of our people. And again, in the last 2 years, what he's done to protect the constitutional rights, but also to drive what we call the system, to push for speed and flexibility in everything we do, I think has been a huge record of achievement that he leaves behind. And I want to thank him on behalf of our party and personally for the incredible work that he has done. But we have work to do. If I was to simplify one of the key characteristics of what's in our programme of government to what we need to do now, is we need a bigger state. We need more of our republic working collectively in this democratic constitutional way, because we are beset by issues that require real effort, real commitment, real conviction and coordination of our efforts. And we all know that first and foremost, that's housing our people and those who come to our shores seeking refuge or opportunity. And that won't be easy, but I'm absolutely certain that we will do everything we can to provide that housing. We have set up the mechanisms to allow the state step in where the market is not going to be able to succeed. And while it's challenging, beset by all sorts of difficulties, we will deliver. And secondly, in health, the three key targets for this government, the reform of our health service, starts with the understanding that the state is all of us. The state is every porter, every nurse, every consultant, every clerk, every single person. The job of us in government is to, and in local government and the new chair of the CEO of the HSE, is to allow each one of us to take up and step up a role in providing care for each other, and to be creative and do things differently. And it's not just about how much money you throw at things, it's how you make the best use of that money to deliver what we need. In the next 2 years, the biggest change The thing that's going to matter most, not just in the next 2 years, but the next 2 and 3 decades, is what we do collectively as a country to tackle climate change, to improve our country as we do so, to rely on our own and to tap into our own energy resources, which protect us, give us greater security, as well as providing for a better environment. That we do change fundamentally Irish farming and forestry. So we diversify. We bring new income streams to encourage a whole new generation of people to come in to this most important task of our time, to protect, to restore nature, provide the food we need, and maintain and restore a beautiful country, which is what we have the great joy to live within. We have to change. The biggest political challenge is going to be the very basic agreement at a local level, every council in this country, as to how we move around, how we avoid gridlock, and how we create a sense of community by what is going to be a complete pivot in our transport system. System change, as the OECD recommended in a report earlier this year. So we build up that sense of community. We make ours a country where it is socially just in having everyone having access to the transport systems that we need. And last but not least, in climate change, it is a new economy, a new circular economy. But we have to realise, and we do realise, that the economy serves society and not the other way around. That the wall of the economy, the roots of the word, is in managing your home. And as we all know, the home isn't just about the bricks and mortar. It's about having time to listen to the spirits in our heart. It's about how do you put an economic price on humour? Well, we in government are committed to that, and I want to commend my Green Party colleagues in particular. That protection of cultural institutions is as important as all the other infrastructure that needs to be put in place. The value of caring work, which the economics has never properly measured and priced, is central to what we need to do in providing this new economy. And we need the courage, or how do you value or price the courage in protecting the peace? And we all feel that this week. For Private Sean Rooney and his family, Trooper Shane Carney. How do you measure that price? It's priceless, but it's as important as, it's more important than everything else. It's what we stand for as a country and as a people. It's a path that carries real risks when you go out to uphold the peace, but that's as important as any measure of economic success. That's how we value ourselves as a country more than anything else. I mentioned the Taoiseach having done a good job. The band has been passed on. I was slightly nervous. I met Leo's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Varadkar. I was very pleased to meet them coming in, because I've been there in the past on what was described here euphemistically as, was it robust exchanges with the Taoiseach, please God, future Taoiseach. One thing that Richard Bruton said struck me. He said what you need characteristics for a leader is, was it character, Richard, courage and curiosity? I was thinking of 3 other C's. Well, you need a Taoiseach to be clever. You need a Taoiseach to be collegiate. And you need a Taoiseach to, that cleverness on its own doesn't work. It needs to be mixed with compassion. I believe, and I've seen Leo working closely with him in the last 2.5 years particularly, that he has all those characteristics in spades. And Taoiseach, outgoing Taoiseach, what you said is true. We have worked on the principles of trust. We have arguments. The attractive thing is you don't always win the argument, but also you don't always lose. It's the reasonableness of your argument, in my experience over the last 2 years. If you're going in with the actually winning case, you have a good chance of winning one of the other 2 and then carrying 3 over the line. So we will continue that. We come in for half-time, we take a break tomorrow, and we hit the ground again running tomorrow, for it's a time of real change in the world, an important time for our country. We'll make mistakes. We're not without our flaws, Lord knows, but this is a good functioning government. We stand by our constitution. We go with pride to our Sanuk Turan to seek our seals of office from the President, and for 2 more years we're going to do everything we can to help and serve the Irish people. with Leo Varadkar as Taoiseach.
Thank you very much. Now the Leader of Sinn Féin, Deputy Mary Lou McDonald.
Ceann Comhairle, can I begin by wishing Micheál Martin all the very best as you exit the office of an Taoiseach and your role at Cabinet changes. I wish you and I wish yours a very happy and a very peaceful Christmas. We have, Micheál Martin, for the past 2.5 years, debated the important issues facing Ireland, facing our people, and I have no doubt that you will greatly miss our engagements here on a Tuesday and a Wednesday. I wish you well. Micheál Martin argued in his speech that this government is successful, that this government is delivering. Well, the rest of us must live in a very different Ireland from you. We live in an Ireland where, during your time leading government, the housing emergency has gotten worse, where the crisis in health has gotten worse, where households struggle to get by. And you now pass the baton to Leo Varadkar at a time where more than 11,000 of our people are homeless, including more than 3,000 children. Close to 1 million people are on treatment waiting lists. Many working families queue at food banks to get a hot meal. Surely you cannot count this as success. You all say that there are no easy answers, but I don't think that's an acceptable response to those mothers frantic because their children wait and wait for vital surgery, for essential services, for assessment of needs. To families distressed because they can't pay the latest bill, the mortgage repayment, or afford the rent. To a child growing up in a B&B or a hotel room. Yes, there are no easy answers, but there are answers. Solutions that a government with the right priorities would grasp with both hands, but instead you chose to ignore them. The policies of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, not only over the last 2.5 years, but since you joined together in 2016, have driven these crises. So to dress up your failure as progress is to insult ordinary people who live with the consequences of those failures. Rather than being accountable, rather than facing up to reality, you point the fingers at others. You hide behind excuses. You present alibis for not getting the work done. It's a cop-out, gentlemen, so typical of the parties who have passed power between each other for a century. Ireland is a great country, maybe the greatest. Our people are great people, achieving extraordinary things every day, sometimes against all odds. And what we need now is a government worthy of them, worthy of their hopes and worthy of their ambitions. Sinn Féin does not support the nomination of Leo Varadkar as Taoiseach. The policies of Fine Gael have always been about ring-fencing the wealth and the privilege of those at the top, pushing workers and families to the back of the queue. Privatisation and the hollowing out of public services. This hasn't changed under the leadership of Leo Varadkar. Fine Gael and Leo Varadkar have been in government now for 11 years. Fine Gael and Leo Varadkar's policies are writ large across the crises in housing, healthcare and the deep economic inequalities in Ireland today. And it is no coincidence that during Fine Gael's time in power, people desperately struggle to put a roof over their heads. A generation is locked out of home ownership and renters have been fleeced by extortionate rent, an 82% increase since 2012. Housing policy written for big developers, for wealthy investors and corporate landlords. Fine Gael, of course, are the party that rolled out the red carpet for the cuckoo funds and the vulture funds. You couldn't wait to get them in. And now look at the damage being done. Fine Gael's refusal to accept housing as a basic right has seen the crisis escalate to an emergency so bad that it is now spread to impact education, healthcare and our economy. It's no coincidence either that our hospitals are under unprecedented strain, with a never-ending trolley crisis, record waiting lists and a struggle to recruit and retain staff. The chickens of Fine Gael's failure to invest in and resource our health service have come back to roost, and it's patients that pay the price. And we must remember that Leo Varadkar has been at the centre of these crises, sitting at the cabinet table for over a decade, contributing to these terrible decisions and eventually ascending to the office of An Taoiseach in 2017. We shouldn't forget that Leo Varadkar's last government ran out of road because of Fine Gael's disastrous performance in the areas of health and housing, eventually falling to the prospect of a no-confidence vote in Simon Harris. And nor should we forget that the revolving door of former government ministers into cushy jobs as lobbyists for banks and the insurance industry continued and thrived during Mr Varadkar's term leading government, from cabinet to lobbyist in the blink of an eye. And it's no coincidence that Minister Paschal Donoghue is now ready to oversee the return of bumper pay to the top brass in the banks, backing the haves over the have-nots, showing up always for the insider class, looking after their friends in high places, has always been the Fine Gael way. It is the Leo Varadkar way. But the episode that defines Leo Varadkar's last term as Taoiseach is his leaking of a confidential government document to a friend, something that he admitted to on the floor of this Dáil. And while criminal proceedings were not pursued on this matter, serious questions remain. And what is really worrying is that it is still Deputy Varadkar's stated belief that he is somehow above having his actions questioned by the Standards in Public Office Commission. Leo Varadkar believes that power puts him beyond accountability. This is the view held by the man who now returns to the office of An Taoiseach, the man who recently told young people forced away from Ireland by his policies that the grass isn't always greener in other countries, the man who invited exploited renters to remember that one person's rent is another person's income, the man who advised a generation locked out of home ownership to borrow from their parents for a mortgage deposit, the bank of mammy and daddy. These are the views that emphasise loud and clear that Fine Gael and their friends in Fianna Fáil have been in power for far too long. They are out of touch, out of ideas and out of time. Micheál Martin has resigned as Taoiseach and the government dissolved. We should now have a general election because we need a change of government. Tá is agan agin chana féin cad a yoamid Leo Varadkar mar Taoiseach. Bhí muid an sohanna. Dúltaíocht daoine tithíocht, dúltaíocht daoine cuaram sláinte, Servishi Puibli atá in Ruchquí, Ibrithe agus Chowley sánathe a cúil na scuana. Tá athrú rialtas ag tastáil muintir na hÉireann, ní hamháin athrú Taoiseach. We face real challenges, Ceann Comhairle, but there is hope, positivity and ambition amongst our people. Ireland has big opportunities in the coming decades. The reunification of our country, the achievement of energy independence and the power of our young people. Capturing these opportunities is the key to Ireland reaching our greatest days, days that are on the horizon that will belong to everyone. But we will not get there with Leo Varadkar as Taoiseach. We will not get there on the watch of this government. But we can get there. With a change in leadership, with a change in direction, with a change in government, we will get there. Today, Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, essentially the one party now, backed to the hilt by the Greens, cling to power, not in a demonstration of diversity or maturity, but as a demonstration of that claustrophobic sense of entitlement that above all else will work might and main to keep change out and to keep others out. But make no mistake, You can't prevent the new dawn breaking. The light of a better tomorrow burns brightly, and you can stand in the way of change. You can refuse to budge. You can slow it down. You can make the people wait a little longer, but you cannot, and you will not stop that change. The Touch paper has been lit by the hopes of a new generation. The old ways are on borrowed time, and our future will be defined by equality, prosperity, unity and opportunity for all. Building a strong, modern, vibrant all-Ireland economy. That's a future worth fighting for. It's a future that a Sinn Féin government would work night and day to achieve, for workers, for families, for communities and for Ireland.
agus inis páirtí an lucht oibre a cheachtain Bacik.
Good last Ceann Comhairle, and I want to begin by extending a personal tribute to Deputy Micheál Martin, to Teachta Micheál Martin, for his public service, and personally also to thank him for the courtesy, Deputy Martin, that you've extended to me since I became a TD in this House. I do appreciate that. And I think we all acknowledge you took office at an unprecedented time of challenge during the COVID-19 pandemic, and of course since then we've faced the additional enormous challenge of the fallout from Russia's brutal war on Ukraine, and at a time where we are also facing this existential climate catastrophe. I think that has to be acknowledged. It must also be acknowledged that very few people get to choose of their own free will their time of stepping down as Taoiseach, and so for that alone today is certainly unique. However, we in Labour cannot support the Fine Gael nomination at this changeover time. We do not believe that this changeover, so-called, represents anything but a cosmetic change at a time when we do need to see a real and substantial change in the policies and the solutions proposed by government. Because we in Labour know, as people across the country know, that this government is not delivering an Ireland that works for all, an Ireland of equality. And one of our party's founders, Thomas Johnson, over 100 years ago in 1919, wrote in the democratic programme of the First Dáil, "It shall be the first duty of the government of the Republic to make provision for the physical, mental and spiritual well-being of the children, to secure that no child shall suffer hunger or cold from lack of food, clothing or shelter." Important words, and yet nearly 250,000 children today live in deprivation, with 3,480 children homeless. And a week from Christmas, far too many parents will struggle to heat homes this winter, to put food on the table for their children, or to ensure that Santa brings a gift. Last Ceann Comhairle, we've come through a once-in-a-century pandemic. We've seen the capacity of the state to pivot, to deliver change and to deliver public services and deliver radical change urgently. And yet this government has failed to seize the opportunity to refashion our housing provision, our social infrastructure, our health service. At a time of strong budget surpluses, we've seen the opportunity to transform our country and our society squandered. Now is when we need a radical vision to bring about a real change in policy, at a time when we're seeing this brutal war being waged on our continent, with tens of thousands killed in Ukraine and millions of refugees fleeing Russian aggression. We're seeing a return of inflation ravaging incomes, hitting those on low wages, on pensions and social welfare the hardest. And we're seeing ominous signs of a slowdown, with job losses in the tech sector and the stalling of construction projects, slowing down the building and delivery of new homes. We're seeing record heat waves across Europe this summer, a sharp reminder of stalled progress and untenable delays on bringing about renewable energy and the action necessary to meet our ambitious climate targets. We were told in 2020 that this was a programme for government that would invest in climate action, that would deliver a new energy system. But once again, we're seeing a climate action plan for next year delayed, and no sign of the necessary reductions in emissions that need to be delivered upon now and next year. When the outgoing Taoiseach was nominated 2.5 years ago, we were told the test of the government would be one of delivery. And that's the right test. But on all the key measures of delivery and of success, this government has failed. Homelessness is up. Healthcare waiting lists are up and carbon emissions are up. Too many children have inadequate homes. Too many children with autism lack appropriate school places or any school places. Too many parents are unable to find an affordable home or a suitable childcare or early years place, with no sign of promised reductions in creche fees and creches closing. Too many workers remain on low and insecure pay, stuck in traffic jams without decent public transport options. And too many older people remain deeply anxious as we face into the winter about heating their homes or getting the care they need. Ireland remains far too dependent on fossil fuels, with surging use of energy in data centres and the failure to build the offshore wind we've been promised for so long, the offshore wind generation capacity that is so sorely needed. So the failure of delivery on so many fronts should have refashioned the agenda and the policies of this government. And instead, what we're seeing with today's cosmetic changeover is a programme for government that's unchanged, with no new ambitions and the same complacency. At the midway point of this coalition, why are we seeing no substantive revision in policy? Why are we seeing a programme for government that remains out of step with the changed world? And why are we seeing the same ministers retained in departments where they're simply not delivering necessary change? Now, maybe the new Taoiseach will surprise us later today with more dramatic changes that have been expected. But unless the policies of the government and the programme for government are revised, there will be no change in delivery and lack of delivery. And this is also a government that has been plagued by resignations, by instability and by ethical concerns. We know, or we can predict, I think, at this stage, that Deputy Leo Varadkar will return to the office of Taoiseach, and on a personal level, I wish Teachta Varadkar very well. But his party has spent too long in government and has run out of ideas. In the 7 years since Fine Gael have been in government, since the 2016 general election, they have singularly failed to resolve the housing crisis and indeed have made it worse, with an ideological insistence on over-reliance on the private sector to deliver homes, delivery that is simply not happening. We've seen a catalogue of unforced errors by ministers, while talented backbenchers apparently remain blocked from taking high office. And the erosion of standards in public office has indeed accelerated in more recent years under this Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil government. A laissez-faire approach to ethics rules and appointment processes and the growing habit and tendency to centralise power with ministers and to ram legislation through the Oireachtas, as this week with the planning legislation, points to a growing arrogance and complacency. There has been no progress on the public sector standards bill first developed by Deputy Brendan Howlin that would have overhauled ethics legislation and standards in public office. We did see yesterday the outgoing Minister for Public Expenditure issue a press release to announce approval of a report on the ethics review, but we still have no draft law, despite SIPO repeatedly asking for more powers and despite multiple scandals in recent years. So today the Labour Party are putting the government on notice on the need to act urgently on ethics reform, and we will be pressing this in the new year. Last Count Corla, when the Dáil last gathered to elect a Taoiseach, I was not a member. And indeed, the only electoral contest since the coalition was formed delivered a clear rebuke to the punch and judy politics of Fine Gael versus Sinn Féin. The Dublin Bay South by-election result last July 2021 showed the public desire for a more constructive, positive, left-wing alternative to the status quo, a demand for strong state intervention on housing, on care, on climate and on jobs. And that demand is the reason why the Labour Party in 2020 made clear that we could not support or form part of the government formation. The permanent improvements we wanted to see in public services and increased state investment would require commitment to a change in tax policy, particularly on wealth. And our view of this was confirmed by the recent report of the Commission on Taxation and Welfare. Yet in 2020 and since, both Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil have consistently ruled out changes in tax policy, limiting scope for a government to deliver transformational change. They've consistently ruled out the necessary increase in state investment, in particular in services. And we know that therefore they cannot deliver the necessary change, particularly on housing, but also on care and on climate and on building communities. Throughout the course of this Dáil, the Labour Party has put forward constructive, social democratic and socialist alternative policies. We've worked to deliver change from opposition, and we will continue to outline our vision of an Ireland that works for all. On workers' rights, we've proposed legislation on sick pay, a living wage, a real right to flexible work and pay rises for workers. On housing, our renters' rights bill would have limited grounds for eviction and would have frozen rents. Our bill to implement the Kenny report would end land speculation and hoarding. On care, we've championed student nurses, community and care workers and a public universal childcare scheme. On climate, we've argued for radical measures, including a €9 a month climate ticket and genuinely ambitious state action on emissions. And more generally on reform, we've argued for a ban on gambling ads, for reform of our citizenship rules, for rights for cohabiting couples and a national autism strategy. On the economy, our fully costed budgets and cost of living measures would have put this country on a pathway to deliver real equality. And that's the sort of Ireland that the Labour Party wants to see, an Ireland that would work for all. And that's why in the next election, we will offer a clear vision and alternative to both narrow nationalism and to right-wing orthodoxy and ideology. We will be offering a social democratic, socialist alternative to the Punch and Judy show, a show that may grab headlines but that will not deliver change. Lascan Corla, I've always believed that social and economic rights, social and economic equality are two sides of the same coin, and that's why I joined the Labour Party. And campaigning for economic justice and standing up for those struggling to meet ends meet, those are core to the vision and values of our party. And now, today, more than ever, as we see the failure of the market-knows-all policies of this government, we know that Labour values of equality, solidarity and fairness are needed more than ever. And that's why today we will not be supporting the Fine Gael nomination for Taoiseach, and that's why we believe that instead of cosmetic change, we need to see real and substantial change in Ireland.
Catherine Murphy, Social Democrats.
And Taoiseach, I want to start my contribution this morning by going back in time to the 27th of June 2020, the day you became Taoiseach. Back then, the Dáil business was conducted in the convention centre, as we well remember, and the country was in strict lockdown. It was so strict that your own family weren't able to be with you on that very important day for them and for you. I want to acknowledge that you led by example on that occasion and throughout the crisis, and we're all grateful for that. I know you've always viewed the Office of Taoiseach and the awesome responsibility that it entails with the respect and reverence that it deserves, and you've undoubtedly worked very hard as Taoiseach. That hard work and gruelling schedule necessitated many personal sacrifices for you and indeed for your family, as you've talked about earlier. It's important that we also acknowledge that. Politics is all-consuming, and family life and personal relationships can sometimes bear the brunt of that. Unusually, when the Taoiseach steps down, the exit route is clear and the door closes, behind a life in full-time politics. The role of rotating Taoiseach, is very different, and we can see that today. Instead of an exit route, it's more like a roundabout with the government going around in circles because, crucially, there's no real change in direction and there won't be any change in direction after today. The new Taoiseach, when he's appointed, will not veer from the course that has been set by the programme for government, and that is why the Social Democrats won't be supporting the nomination for Taoiseach of Leo Varadkar. We can support the programme for government that is really a failure. It has failed to deliver the people that most need to be supported. This is especially true when it comes to housing. There's a statistic which I think exemplifies the Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael failure when it comes to the housing disaster. Between 2004 and 2021, the proportion of young people in their late 20s still living in their childhood bedrooms has increased from 36% to 61%. This is the highest increase in young people being forced to continue to live at home anywhere in the European Union, and that's evidence, that's fact. Is it any wonder then that the recent Eurostat poll revealed that Irish young people are among those who express the most dissatisfaction with life anywhere in the EU. In the majority of EU countries, life satisfaction is higher among young people than older people. But the reverse is true in Ireland. It doesn't give me any pleasure to say this, but Ireland is no country for young people. We all know the reasons for that. Young people cannot afford the exorbitant cost of living in Ireland. And your government hasn't helped with that. Rents in Dublin are now the astronomical €2,300 a month, or €28,000 a year. In the rest of the country, rents have also climbed to record highs of €1,600 per month, and that's €19,200 a year. We all know the minimum wage. The minimum wage is €21,294. So if you're living outside of Dublin, you have the grand total of €2,094 per annum to live on after you pay your rent. That's €40 a week. It's now impossible for young people living in Dublin to survive on the minimum wage, or even many people on very good wages. Taoiseach, throughout your tenure in office, you've repeatedly said that the housing disaster is the biggest societal problem that we face, and I wholeheartedly agree with you on that sentiment. But I prefer to deal with facts and not sentiment. And while it's evident that your government is treating the housing disaster, it's not evident that you're treating the housing disaster as the emergency that it is. All you have to cling to is a list of targets that were set in your Housing for All plan, a list of targets that are now, as we all know, woefully inadequate and out of date. Taoiseach, people can't live in targets or on targets. They need actual houses that they can afford, whether they're to rent or buy. And it's not just about bricks and mortar. The price of the housing crisis is being paid by 3,480 children losing their childhoods as they grow up in emergency accommodation, by the relationships that break down because of the stress of housing insecurity, by the couples who postpone having a family, and by those disconnected communities that result when people are unable to put down roots. What kind of society are we building when affordability is now defined by the government as being €450,000 in Dublin and €400,000 in Cork or Galway? Do you know that a mortgage on those amounts is at least €114,000? Increasingly, Ireland has become a country of haves and have-nots. The most vulnerable are being left behind without so much as a second glance by this government. The cost of living crisis is decimating workers and their families all over the country who are now struggling to survive. The supports offered by the government have not been enough to keep people's heads over water. In an indictment of this government's failure to protect the most vulnerable, elderly people, and we heard it during this week on the radio, are presenting to hospital with hypothermia because they're not heating their homes. In the absence of leadership from this government, civil society has stepped into the breach. It was reported yesterday that primary schools all over the country are now distributing food vouchers to help the struggling family put food on the table this Christmas. On Wednesday, the Capuchin Day Centre had to stop handing out tickets for their Christmas hamper due to safety concerns after thousands of people turned up seeking help. It was, according to one man who had volunteered with that service since 1972, the worst he has ever seen. State supports for those who need them most are threadbare and disintegrating. Children with disabilities are being denied basic health care and their educational entitlements, and with them, the right to reach their full potential. More than 110,000 children are now on waiting lists for therapies like physiotherapy, speech and language therapy, and disability services. It's not acceptable for the government to blame recruitment problems for a failure to provide essential services. If services were properly planned and prioritised, then crucial staff would be in place. Waiting lists are now a feature, not a flaw, of the health service. How else do you explain how there are more than 900,000 people and on some form of waiting list waiting for care? Waiting lists have soared despite record investments in the health service in recent years. Why? Because pumping money into a broken system will not produce the desired results. We need a reform of the health service. The reform was set out in the Sláinte Care plan, but has not been properly implemented. The Green Party have maintained their presence in government because they say they want to deliver on climate action. But the people who supported the Green Party are now learning that their climate rhetoric does not match with climate action. The figures speak for themselves. Our emissions last year went up by 5.4%. The target was a reduction of 4.8%. Just last week, we had another damning report from the SEAI, which warned that our emissions have contributed to an increase this year of 6%. We have just 8 years to stop the worst impacts of the climate crisis, an irreversible climate catastrophe. And under this government, our chances of reaching that climate target are becoming increasingly remote. Taoiseach, I believe the potential and desire for change is huge in Ireland. And I think there's great belief in people that we can do better. But people want genuine change, not a repackaging of stale parties or policies as something new. This handing over of the baton from yourself to the Taoiseach does not represent real change. Most people in society will not feel a difference. They probably won't even see a difference. Even your own cabinet members, most of whom are remaining in situ, will barely feel the change. This rotation of Taoiseach will not serve the people out there who need new politics informed by the values of social democracy that delivers for them. The only thing it will achieve is finally sounding the death knell for the Civil War politics after a century and the pretence that there was ever any real difference between Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael.
People before profit solidarity. Ich habe to Richard Boyd Barrett. 5 minutes.
Yeah, sharing time. Last Count Corla, I don't wish to be ungracious, but this is not a time for standing ovations. It's not a time for self-congratulation, because we are living in one of the richest countries in the world, and yet 1 in 5 of our population are living at risk of poverty. As we head into Christmas, there are 3,400 children who are going to go through Christmas in emergency accommodation, a total of 11,000 people in emergency accommodation, homeless, many of those children having suffered their 2nd, 3rd or 4th Christmas now in homeless accommodation. 1 in 5 of our population suffer deprivation, and a whole generation of young people have no prospect of being able to afford the rents that are being charged or the house prices that have all reached absolutely record levels. And this is happening not because it's necessary, but because Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael have protected the interests of the few over the many. At the same time that we are seeing that shocking level of homelessness, of deprivation, of people suffering the cruel blows of an unprecedented cost of living crisis, corporate profits have soared through the roof, up 159% over the last decade. The ESB, the energy companies, this year saw their profits in the first 6 months treble. But at the same time, we have people on pitiful incomes who do not know will they have enough money to pay for the electricity. Yesterday I got a message from a young woman in Wexford, Jill, a single parent with a child with special needs, who in the last week had put €200 in 1 week into her pay-as-you-go electricity meter. When she rang up Electric Ireland to ask would they come out and check whether the meter was faulty, because she simply could not believe that this was what she was being charged, when she has an income of €268, they said, we will come out, but if there's not a problem with the meter, we'll charge you €200 just for coming out to see you. Earlier this week, I read out a letter from a mother who herself and her husband and her 2 teenage children are facing the court to be evicted from the home where they've lived all their lives in February, even though the government claimed they were going to prevent this stuff. People who've paid their taxes, have done nothing wrong, always paid the rent. They, along with thousands of others, are going into this Christmas facing the prospect that they will be homeless in the new year. That is the legacy of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. A society for the few, while the many suffer homelessness, deprivation, and struggle to survive day to day. So in our view, this is not a time to change the Taoiseach. It is the time to change government. We need a different type of society where people are put before the profits and wealth of a tiny few. We need a left government. We need a socialist government that will use the wealth and resources that exist in our society to eliminate homelessness, to end the scandal of people waiting on trolleys, or nearly 900,000 people waiting for essential procedures in our hospitals. And I would say to our colleagues in the opposition that if, as many of us are saying, it is time after more than 100 years to break the cycle of Fianna Fáil. They've had their chance and they have let us down. Then they also need to give a pledge to the people out there that they will not prop up a Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael government come the next election. It is time for a different type of government in this country that puts the needs of working people for basic things like the right to housing and a secure, dignified existence for everybody. That is perfectly possible in one of the wealthiest societies in the world, but it will not happen unless we remove Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael from power.
Bon Jovi song says, the more things change, the more they stay the same. It's just reality, the same damn song with a different melody. And that's what's happening here today. The change of Taoiseach will mean nothing for the vast majority of people in this country. And more than that, the election of Leo Varadkar will actually guarantee a doubling down and a continuation of the past policies. Leo Varadkar has always been the most ideological of the Tweedledum, Tweedledee choices that we have. You notoriously targeted the so-called welfare cheats, but in reality you target the most marginalised people. And at the same time, you seek always to double down on the justification for the growing gap between wealth and poverty in this country. The Commission on Taxation recently pointed out that the direction of travel is only going in one way. The share of the wealth for the top 20% is increasing, while all other groups have a lower share, an increasing lower share. And I have no doubt, Leo Taoiseach Nua, that this trend will continue under your watch. You are truly a safe pair of hands for that section of Irish society and the guarantor that there will be no change in policy for the next 2 years. There will be no change for the hundreds of thousands of people in housing need, no change for those on the wrong side of a private versus public healthcare service. But oddly enough, I do think one area where we are likely to see a change is in climate, but it's not going to be for the better. And I say that because the change under you with the Greens in power with you, which is an utter disaster for the environment and the climate movement, will mean that the neoliberal bandwagon will ensure that climate issues will get worse and environmental disasters will widen. And I say that because I know you will guarantee that LNGs will come into this country. You recently met with New Fortress Energy. Data centres will flourish, targets will be missed, and we can expect plenty of rhetoric around this, but like housing, we are going to see utter failure on deliver. So I think the slogan for today should be adopted from the school students' climate strike movement. We don't need system change, we need climate change. We need system change, not climate change. And today we need system change, not Taoiseach change.
Lewis
Carroll's Through the Looking Glass and What Alice Found There, published in 1871, featured the characters Tweedledum and Tweedledee. According to Wikipedia, the Tweedle brothers never contradict each other. They complement each other's words, which led John Tenniel to portray them as twins in his illustration for the book. Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil are the Tweedledum and Tweedledee of Irish politics, and as if to prove the point this morning, they swap around the top jobs, and the policy of the government will stay more or less exactly the same. On Wednesday morning, 4 a.m, queues began to form outside the Capuchin Day Centre here in Dublin for tickets for Christmas hamper for those in need. By 11 a.m, Gardaí had to intervene to stop the distribution of tickets amid what was described by the centre's coordinator as absolutely chaotic scenes. This happened in the capital city of a wealthy first world country, a country which you, Deputy Varadkar, have helped to shape, having been a government minister for 11 years now. My colleague, Councillor Leo Whelan, 25 years of age, is in a WhatsApp group with 21 of her friends. Since the start of the year, 20 of Leah's friends have emigrated. In a state led for 100 years by governments headed by Fine Gael or Fianna Fáil, a state from which many, many more than 1 million people have been forced to emigrate, youth emigration is starting up again in earnest. Back in the day, emigration was driven by mass unemployment. Today, it is driven by the housing emergency. No party in this House is more responsible for this crisis than Deputy Varadkar's party, who have been in power as it was allowed to develop all along the line. If the people had a vote today, I believe they would vote for change, and that Deputy McDonald would probably be the one heading off to the park. But as the Dáil enters his second half, I would say to Deputy McDonald, the change the people need will not be found in governments that include Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael, nor will it be found in discussions with the likes of Mary Harney or the big property developers. We need an alternative to the capitalist market and its representatives, not a second 11 for it. I will be voting against the nomination of Deputy Varadkar.
This time in 1994, the then Fianna Fáil Labour coalition collapsed. This month, exactly 28 years ago, during negotiations for a new government, I was sent on a mission by John Bruton. The objective was to find a solution to a key Labour demand for a rotating Taoiseach. Labour were in a strong position with 32 seats. They had the option of going back into government with Fianna Fáil under a new leader. Fine Gael had lost the 87, the 89 and the 92 election. The opportunity to return to power had to be grasped. The compromise was the appointment of the first ever Labour Minister for Finance, Rory Quinn. Incidentally, that time was also the first introduction of what we call the High Chair, which is now known as a Super Junior. So it is with a great sense of satisfaction that I am here today to participate in the notion of a rotating Taoiseach becoming a reality. Due to the unwavering loyalty of the people of Tipperary, I am here to endorse this historic event. Once bitter rivals, Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, are now combining out of national interest and self-interest to rotate the position of Taoiseach and restructure a cabinet. Sinn Féin can take comfort from the fact that change does happen even if it takes 100 years. Today's event shows that all things are possible. Nothing is certain in politics. The uncertainty of the current times has informed my decision today to support the transition of government. There are several pessimists in this chamber. They continually bark and bite. They rail against government and the working of the institutions of the state. That approach gathers headlines but does nothing to achieve progress. I prefer to be fair, to give credit when it is due, and to objectively criticise failings. It is my experience that a positive, constructive approach to politics yields results, in particular for my constituents. Our country and its people are once again facing dangerous times. This is an administration which has experience of dealing with difficult times. In its first task was to deal with the worst health pandemic since the Spanish flu of 1918. This was followed by the worst energy crisis since the 70s and the first major European land war since 1945. The coalition has had a difficult birth. It faced many challenges in a resolute and cool-headed fashion. And of course it did get things wrong. but it has had enough success to merit the retention of the confidence of the membership of this House. Our finances have been well managed and in relatively good order. The government has kept the lights on and business open. It has strived to look after those who need help. Our welfare system is one of the most generous in Europe. The majority of people want this government to run its term before casting ultimate judgment at the ballot box. And for now, people recognise that the centre of Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil have held this country together. This is a stable team. It is not spectacular, but it is modestly effective. By contrast, at this time, the options are a Sinn Féin-led government dependent on the people before profit, with a few others from the left. This is not a coherent alternative. They do not have the confidence of business. They do not have the confidence of rural Ireland. They do not have the confidence of those who work. A combination of Sinn Féin and the left are untried and untested. And we only have to remember that it took Liz Truss 1 month to send the UK economy into a tailspin. The next few years are going to be exceptionally tough. We need an experienced team to lead us. It is not a time for experiments. The coalition has done some good work, and there are many things that it can do better. The tasks of government are clear. People need homes and shelter. They need good hospitals and healthcare. They need schools, colleges and centres of education and excellence. And in an increasingly modern economy and society, they need good and affordable childcare. People need to feel safe and secure in their homes and communities. This renewed administration also needs to find a better way to talk about climate change. The Green Party especially are going to have to learn to talk more respectively to rural Ireland. In conclusion, I want to thank outgoing Taoiseach Micheál Martin for his accessibility and courtesy. I commend him on the job he has done in guiding the country through a difficult period. Micheál Martin has governed with honesty, collegiality and grit. His successor, Leo Varadkar, has his own style. He has skill and ability. He is forthright and open to new ideas. He is not afraid to have an opinion and take a stance. I wish him every possible success in tackling the priority issues for this government and the people of our country.
On October 2019, Leo Varadkar as Taoiseach apologised to the women wronged by cervical check scandal and promised that no woman would ever have to go through courts again to get justice. 3 years later, and despite that promise, over 370 women have done just that. They have gone through the court system to get justice. Leo Varadkar was Minister for Health at the time that the cervical check scandal happened. However, he says he has no recollection of being informed in relation to that. While as Minister for Health, Leo Varadkar said that short of an asteroid hitting this planet, the National Children's Hospital will be built for €750 million and it will be open by 2020. It is currently double that cost and could go up to €2 billion before it's open and won't be open until 2025. It's an incredible situation. One of the parties that prides itself as a party of prudence is actually the party that is presiding itself over serious cost overruns right across the capital projects. When Leo Varadkar was Taoiseach in his last year of that, 35 of the 38 most significant state capital projects in the state were over budget. The National Broadband Plan, the National Maternity Hospital or others. It seems like if you put the word national beside a capital project in this country, it adds hundreds of millions and puts the project way over time. On his way out of health, Leo Varadkar cut the mental health budget in this state by a third. He kept a strong interest in health, however, when he was Taoiseach, and he leaked a confidential document which was negotiated with the IMO to his friend who was president of a rival GP group. I asked Leo Varadkar in his stall, has he ever leaked from Cabinet? And after a long pause, an awkward pause, he responded, nothing of this nature. All politicians leak from time to time. During the COVID crisis, when lives were extremely restricted, when ordinary men and women couldn't book a table in a bar and a restaurant, when funeral undertakers, brides, grooms and the hospitality industry were abiding by one set of rules, Leo Varadkar, along with others, dozens of others, partied with Catherine Tapone. Similar actions would have led to resignations in other Western countries. But he was saved because the Attorney General broke a traditional silence and said that the rules that everybody else was abiding by at the time were not actually the rules at all. Leo Varadkar presided over the longest and most restrictive lockdowns in Europe. He presided over the only government in the whole of Europe that actually closed down the building of homes at that time. And despite the rising number of excess deaths at the moment, he is part of a government that is still refusing to investigate the high level of excess deaths that are occurring in this state at the moment. When Leo Varadkar has been in power, the north of Ireland has staggered from crisis to crisis. The north is dealt with really only as a crisis by this government, instead of an opportunity for the freedom that Michael Collins once spoke about. And I would ask, since Leo Varadkar is taking the position of Taoiseach 100 years since the foundation of the Free State and the shocking state executions of Republicans by the state, that he might use his position to finally put an end to civil war politics and offer a state apology for those executions that happened over 100 years ago at the moment. Leo Varadkar has been part of a cabinet that has seen one of the worst housing crises in history. Record homelessness, incredible number of deaths of homeless people on the streets, record local authority housing waiting lists, record rents and record house prices. He's in part of a government that have seen record A&E overcrowding and waiting times, and hospital waiting lists have got worse for so many people across this country. And the party of so-called law and order have seen so many parts of this state start to live in fear as the country has got more dangerous for them. More Gardaí have been attacked while Leo Varadkar has been in government. More Gardaí have resigned and fewer are joining the ranks over the last 10 years. Now, Leo Varadkar is not solely responsible, obviously, for all of these issues, and no political leader can get it right on every single occasion. But Leo Varadkar has been the most senior party in government for the last 10 years and has to take responsibility for these issues. It gives me no pleasure to list these litany of disasters, but there's been poor judgment, there has been a lack of trust, and there has been a harsh Tory political instinct behind many of these decisions. And for those reasons, I cannot support his nomination as Taoiseach.
Rural Independent Group. Mattie McGrath.
As I'd like to wish you, Count Cola, and every member of this House a happy, holy and a peaceful Christmas. I'd remind this, if it was later in the evening and we were down the round room or somewhere, I'd say this is more like Lanigan's ball. I stepped out and you stepped in again, and I stepped out and we had Lanigan's ball. But the people of Ireland have questions they want answered. I've spoken here on many occasions and mentioned powerful globalist forces who are having a huge impact on the way our country is being run. Probably the most powerful of all these globalist organisations is the World Economic Forum, or WEF as it's known, which are based in Geneva, Switzerland, and which is fronted by an individual named Klaus Schwab. This man, Mr. Schwab, has written many controversial books about how he believes the world should be governed, including the Fourth Industrial Revolution, stakeholder capitalism, and COVID-19, the Great Reset. Could I get some silence, please? He has written and spoken openly about what he calls the Great Reset. He describes it as an opportunity to reset our world, to create a healthier and more equitable and more prosperous Europe and a future. This sounds fantastic initially, but on closer examination of this cabal, which I call him, it's strange. One of his most famous quotes from 2016 gives us a little insight. He says, and I quote, "By 2030 you will own nothing and be happy about it." He also quoted as saying, "The sovereign state has become obsolete." I remember some of you top people here saying this about our sovereignty recently as well. He speaks about a system called stakeholder capitalism, which he and the WEF see as a replacement for the current financial system, shareholder capitalism. This system is quoted on the WEF website, is one where governments, business and individuals collaborate. It's a system which would see corporations, wealthy, powerful elites and citizens being given equal take in the running of their countries. This sounds very like the same what was Italian fascist dictator Mussolini described as corporate state. In fact, this sounds the very same as Mussolini's very definition of fascism, when he said, and I quote, "Fascism is equal to corporationism because it's a merger of state and corporate power." This all might sound like some sort of conspiracy, and I wish it was, but it is not. For my good. All right, we'll see who will have the last laugh. God, Santi might come to you. Right. It's not, thank God, no. Thank God. If I could, with your permission, Count Crowder. There's certain things we can't discuss in this chamber anymore because you're shouted down. We know that. This is all my, as I said, we have several books from Mr. Schwab, and I will quote again from Mr. Schwab at the end of from the World Economic Forum, where he says he's very proud of most of these young generation, the Prime Minister of Trudeau and President of Argentina, and so on. It is that when he also, and I quote him, is that we penetrated the cabinets. And yesterday, and this is from his quote in 2016, I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I would know that half of his cabinet, or even more than half of the cabinet, are actually young global leaders and the World Economic Forum. Now, Taoiseach, this brings me to the nub of the question. Now, Taoiseach-elect. Taoiseach, thank you. Well, yeah, well, okay, funny. You're one and the same. I said I stepped out and you stepped in again. If it's going, it's on the government website right now. If anyone wants to look it up, you will see that the website is being touted as the WF's Young Global Leaders. And can you explain to me and to the people of Ireland, if not people here don't want to hear it, why are you a young globalist leader of the organisation which is obviously looking to destroy the power of the people and destroying our democracy? And you're listed on that, and it's just funny, all right. Why are you a young globalist leader of an organisation that sets out to take and destroy our sovereignty and sovereignty of other countries as well? And can you explain to the Irish people how your position as Taoiseach will endure and how it doesn't present a conflict of interest? Because I believe it does. And can I tell you that the Irish people and individuals are very, very worried about this. You mightn't want to know about it, but they are worried about it. And it's WEF members or any other supporters. I did speak to one of your ministers to be today during the week, and he told me it was a great organisation. There was nothing wrong with it. So I rest my case just to point out that I will not be voting for you as Taoiseach today.
Thank you. Deputy Michael Healy-Rae.
Thank you very much, Les Caller. And first of all, at the very outset, I'd like to pay my heartfelt sympathies to the family of the late Private Sean Rooney and to send our concern and our wishes to Trooper Shane Carney and to thank and to say how we're standing in solidarity with the Defence Forces. And today I think it's only right and proper that we also think of other people, like our own Garda Síochána, who put themselves in harm's way on a daily basis to protect and uphold the law and the rule of our land, be it at home or abroad, and to send a very, very special word to the Defence Forces, the people who are abroad today, that we're thinking of them, we're praying for them, and we're so sorry that at this time of the year that this has happened. One lovely young man who had his whole life in front of him, and he laid it down for working for our state and helping other people, and that's so important in the interest of peace. First of all, I want to say to outgoing Taoiseach Micheál Martin and to your wife Mary and to your family, I wish you nothing but good luck and happiness always, and I wish you well on this day. To incoming Taoiseach Leo Varadkar, to you and your family, you know that I wish you nothing but good luck every day and good fortune. And it is a good day for you and your family. But I want to, on behalf of the people of County Kerry, starting there, because that's what I'm here for, is to speak up for those people. I want to tell you who it is not a good day for, and I want you to remind you of this on this special day. It is not a good day for the thousands of homeless people and people who are on the housing waiting list. It is not a good day for the 1 million people who are waiting on our list to have procedures, medical procedures. It is not a good day for the almost blind people who I take on a bus to Belfast on a regular basis to have a simple operation to have cataracts removed from their eyes that should be done here. It is not a good day for the elderly who are cold in their homes and who recently were told by Green Party representatives in County Kerry, whatever you do, don't go lighting cosy fires because you might damage the environment around Tralee. And they were told that in the last couple of days. An awful thing to tell people. It is not a good day for fishermen who have sold out by this and successive governments. It is not a good day for farmers who are being time and time again put to the pin of their collar to survive. It is not a good day for the horticultural industry, who are forgotten by this government. There are 17,000 of them, you know. There are 6,600 employed directly. There's 11,000 indirectly employed in horticulture. They were completely forgotten about when you shut down the peat industry. It is not a good day for the people who have been allocated home help hours, but that help is not arriving to them because it is not available. It is not a good day for cancer patients, in particular who I represent, who I deal with on a daily basis, who should receive medical cards, full medical cards, automatically, when diagnosis of cancer should equal the allocation of a full medical card for the duration of your illness. It is not a good day for farmers who now realise that their land is going to be taxed, a new tax. That is not a good day for those farmers. It is not a good day for the hospitality sector, who I represent in County Kerry, who are worried about the VAT increase that your government, your new incoming government, is going to put on them next year. I got this very straight, and I'm giving it to you straight on the floor of Dáil from the Kerry Hotel Federation people who I met with during the week. And that is the worry and concern that they have for their sector. So what I am saying to you, it is not a good day for the ordinary working man and woman who time and time again are left to pay for everything and who are worried about the mismanagement that you have done in the past and what we are afraid you'll do in the future. It is not a good day because this day has come and gone before. Days of elections of new Taoiseachs, and nothing seems to change. And what I would ask you, in a very straightforward and open way, and I'm only for your good and ask you to do this, I'd ask you to listen to the people. And I'm trying to be helpful in this, and take it from the ground up. And if your ears are open, and your mind is open to what's wrong in the country, it'll make you and your government a better government. I and people on this side of the House, we will remind you on the best constructive way we can. But when we're doing that, it isn't personal. All it is it's us doing our job and speaking up for the people. And as long as I'll ever live, I'll never understand why people alongside you there think it's a good idea to stop people of cutting turf, because I'll remember those people the same as you'll remember other people. Thank you very much.
John Collins. 4 minutes.
This must be the longest game of musical chairs anyone could have imagined, because that's what it is. Tweedledum replaces Tweedledee, or maybe Tweedledee replaces Tweedledum. Who knows? And quite honestly, it will make very little difference to many, many people. Nothing will change, and the record of failure will continue. It is hard to find a single area of policy where this government has not failed. A government that cannot provide its citizens with one of the most basic needs, an affordable home, is a failure, full stop. 90,000 individual families on lists for public housing, which doesn't exist. 11,000 plus individuals and families, including over 3,000 children, in emergency accommodation for years. And with all that it entails for people's health and mental health due to stress, and the development of children having to travel long distances to school. A situation whereby young, educated and reasonably paid people cannot afford to live in urban areas, especially in Dublin, and is now a key factor in the recruitment and retention crisis in the health service and schools. A complete failure to implement Care as a total package of reforms to transform our public health service. When the Care report was produced, it was pointed out that a piecemeal approach to introducing it was the worst way to go about its implementation. Yet this is what the government has done, and there's been no improvement. In fact, the public health service has gone from bad to worse and is now in complete crisis, despite the great commitment and work of healthcare workers in the system. So this is yet another failure to provide a basic need for citizens: access to high-quality healthcare when you need it, not when you can afford it. There are many failings in our public health system, but the failures in mental health, especially for young people, is an absolute scandal. 100 years after the founding of the state, we still do not have genuinely free education. It speaks volumes that there is actually a state-funded scheme to help struggling parents with the cost of sending their children to school. Just stop and think about that. In what other wealthy modern society would that be tolerated in? We do not provide childcare or children with public transport to get to school in areas where it is required. The expansion of the free school transport system or scheme was a fiasco and utter failure to plan and put in resources necessary. And yet again, we have a scheme, not a right, not an entitlement, but a scheme where you have to qualify. And that's what our public services amount to, not properly funded universal services to meet needs, but a series of schemes. This is again a failure to provide places in schools for children with special needs and provide the services those children need. I could go on. The failure to come anywhere near meeting your own climate emission targets, the failure in the last 3 budgets for welfare payments to keep pace with inflation, resulting in an actual cut. The one programme progressive measure announced by this government was a promise to end direct provision, whereby asylum seekers are effectively imprisoned for years, and that promise now looks like it's gone on the long finger. And so we have this rigmarole today, where one failure will be replaced by another, who's already been there and done that. I call it the Lanigan's Ball Day. You step in again, I step out again, I step in and you step out again, learning to dance for political power. We need change, we need real change, we need a left change, we need socialist change, and we need it badly.
Thank you, Las Cancorla. On a personal basis, can I wish our outgoing Taoiseach, Micheál Martin, all that is good, and thank him for his service, especially during the pandemic, and his stance on Brexit and Ukraine. And I also want to wish the incoming Taoiseach all that is good. And it's not just because it's Christmas. It's because when our Taoiseach and government do well, then it's better for the country. And in my short contribution, I want to draw a parallel with that statement, because when our regions do well, it's better for the country. Taoiseach, when your government took office 8 years ago, the Northern and Western region was classified as developed by the EU Commission. It slipped back to a region in transition, and it is now classified as a lagging industrial region, which means it is caught in a development trap. The EU Commission raised a red flag about this, and how did your government respond? The Northern and Western region received just 217 million of the 900 million ERDF funding. Whereas, if you look at countries like Spain, like Portugal, like Greece, that have lagging regions, we see they are investing by far the greatest amount of this funding in their lagging regions, but not us. And to add insult to injury, when the Northern and Western Regional Assembly had negotiated a 250 million deal with the European Commission, but when it came to negotiating with Irish government departments, the reluctance of these departments to spend money in the region meant 33 million had to be given back from the region. And this is cohesion funding, funding that is meant to close the gaps nationally and within the EU. You could have ensured that this extra money was spent in the region. You could have reduced the co-financing rate to 10%, like you've been asked, but you didn't. And this, to me, is the core of the problem. There is no government department, no responsible or accountable person or group of persons tasked to deliver on balanced regional development. It's not as if anybody in government is saying, we won't try to achieve a balance of development between regions. It's because, like previous governments, it just slips through the cracks. It just doesn't get done. Yes, in some areas, for example, the establishment of the Atlantic Technological University, there is progress. But the gap is so great that unless there is positive discrimination, unless there is a whole-of-government approach to closing that gap, the slippage happens again and again. If we look, for example, at the connectivity of the region, rail, road and air, on accessibility and proximity criteria, according to the OECD, this region scores well below the EU average. And just in the last 5 weeks, not one of the designated 5 surgical hubs is to be located north of a line from Dublin to Galway, while hospitals like Sligo University Hospital, having lost part of its cancer services and being told no cath lab for the North West, now waits and waits and waits for its surgical block. And without this, we all know we cannot guarantee the long-term viability of an acute hospital in the North West. The region is at a tipping point, and because I see little or no evidence of a coordinated and properly funded plan to close the economic gap, and as my colleague Michael Fitzmaurice will later show, there is a real threat to agriculture and rural development in the region without so far adequate response from government, I cannot support the nomination of Leo Varadkar as Taoiseach.
Thank you, Leas Corla. Leas Corla, governments have to deal with the crisis of the day, and this government has probably faced more crises than most. But regardless of the magnitude of those crises, governments have to put in place a strategy for tomorrow. To borrow a phrase, some people look at the world as it is and ask why, others look at the world as it could be and ask why not. Unfortunately, this government has done neither. We have reached the end of the era of hydrocarbons, but we have no alternative in place. We've banned exploration off our west coast, and instead we import gas in tankers, increasing its carbon footprint. We talk about offshore wind energy, yet as yet there's no strategy in place that investors can buy into. We talk about solar power. One minister from the government talks about solar power, another from the same department wants to start a trade war with the only country in which solar technology is manufactured. We talk about anaerobic digestion. We're well suited to it, the EU tells us, but we missed the deadline to apply for funding. We have also reached the end of an era when we can use corporation taxes to fund our economy. Corporation taxes, rightly or wrongly, but increasingly successfully claimed by others as theirs. And instead of using that bounty to develop a health infrastructure, we failed to do so. The trolleys mount up. We failed to put a public transport infrastructure in place that will take people out of cars, which is what we want to do. As we celebrate the centenary of the state, we must acknowledge the reality that there was a better public transport infrastructure in place a century ago relative to its time, and perhaps in actual effect, probably a better public transport system in place. If and when this government starts to put a strategy in place to deal with tomorrow and the next decade, you will have my support, but until it does, I cannot support this government. Thank you.
Agus inis ní mórdam an ceiste chur, agus go nanam nóhi dáléireann an teachta Leo Varadkar chuna bheith ceappa ag an uachtarán mar Taoiseach. I must now put the question that Dáil Éireann nominates Deputy Leo Varadkar for appointment by the President to be Taoiseach. Is that agreed? Na teachtaí atá híomh na tariscina obrigí tá. Na teachtaí atá na gcuine obrigí níl. Is sílam go bhfuil an tariscin rite. Vótáil. Marcia de Helle, we're seek on a hogan. Nomination of Taoiseach. The question is that Dáil Éireann nominates Deputy Leo Varadkar for appointment by the President to be Taoiseach, and on that question a division has been challenged. Tellers Thaw na Teachtaí Jack Chambers agus Brendan Griffin, Neil na Teachtaí Pádraig McLaughlin agus Denise Mitchell.
Deputy James Brown. Deputy Mary Butler. Deputy Thomas Byrne. Deputy Jackie Cahill. Deputy Dara Calleary. Deputy Jack Chambers. Deputy Niall Collins. Deputy Barry Cowan. Deputy Cahill Crowe. Deputy Cormac Devlin. Deputy Stephen Donnelly. Deputy Joe Flaherty. Deputy Sean Fleming. Deputy Norma Foley. Deputy Sean Haughey. Deputy John Lahart. Deputy James Lawless. Deputy Micheál Martin. Deputy Paul McAuliffe. Deputy Charlie McConalogue. Deputy Micheál McGrath. Deputy John McGuinness. Deputy Andreas Moynihan. Deputy Michael Moynihan. Deputy Jennifer Murnan O'Connor. Deputy Eamon O'Keefe. Deputy Dara O'Brien. Deputy Jim O'Callaghan. Deputy James O'Connor. Deputy Willie O'Dea. Deputy Christopher O'Sullivan. Deputy Pádraig O'Sullivan. Deputy Anne Rabbitt. Deputy Brendan Smith. Deputy Niamh Smith. Deputy Robert Troy. Deputy Colin Brophy. Deputy Richard Bruton. Deputy Colin Burke. Deputy Peter Burke. Deputy Kieran Cannon. Deputy Joe Carey. Deputy Jennifer Carroll McNeil. Deputy Simon Coveney. Deputy Michael Creed. Deputy Alan Dillon. Deputy Pascal Donoghue. Deputy Bernard Durkin. Deputy Damien English. Deputy Alan Farrell. Deputy Frankie Feehan. Deputy Charles Flanagan. Deputy Brendan Griffin. Deputy Simon Harris. Deputy Martin Hayden. Deputy Emer Higgins. Deputy Heather Humphreys. Deputy Paul Keogh. Deputy Josepha Madigan. Deputy Helen McEntee. Deputy Joe McHugh. Deputy Hildegard Naughton. Deputy Kieran O'Donnell. Deputy Patrick O'Donovan. Deputy Fergus O'Dowd. Deputy John Paul Phelan. Deputy Neil Richmond. Deputy Michael Ring. Deputy David Stanton. Deputy Leo Varadkar. Deputy Patrick Costello. Deputy Francis Noel Duffy. Deputy Nessa Hurrigan. Deputy Brian Ledden. Deputy Catherine Martin. Deputy Stephen Matthews. Deputy Malcolm Noonan. Deputy Mark O'Cahasig. Deputy Joe O'Brien. Deputy Roderick O'Gorman. Deputy Eamon Ryan. Deputy Oisin Smith. Deputy Chris Andrews. Deputy John Brady. Deputy Martin Brown. Deputy Pat Buckley. Deputy Matt Carthy. Deputy Circa Clark. Deputy Rose Conway Walsh. Deputy Rada Cronin. Deputy Sean Crowe. Deputy David Cullinan. Deputy Pa Daly. Deputy Pierce Doherty. Deputy Paul Donnelly. Deputy Desi Ellis. Deputy Mairead Farrell. Deputy Kathleen Funchin. Deputy Thomas Gold. Deputy Johnny Quirk. Deputy Martin Kenny. Deputy Claire Curran. Deputy Pádraig McLaughlin. Deputy Mary Lou MacDonald. Deputy Denise Mitchell. Deputy Imelda Munster. Deputy Johnny Mythen. Deputy Owen O'Brien. Deputy Donnacha O'Leary. Deputy Rory O'Murchu. Deputy Angus O'Snoddig. Deputy Louise O'Reilly. Deputy Darren O'Rourke. Deputy Maurice Quinlivan. Deputy Patricia Ryan. Deputy Brian Stanley. Deputy Pauline Tully. Deputy Mark Ward. Deputy Ivana Bacik. Deputy Brendan Howland. Deputy Alan Kelly. Deputy Jed Nash. Deputy Eamon Ryan. Deputy Sean Sherlock. Deputy Duncan Smith. Deputy Holly Kearns. Deputy Gary Gannon. Deputy Catherine Murphy. Deputy Keane O'Callaghan. Deputy Roisin Shortall. Deputy Jennifer Whitmore. Deputy Mick Barry. Deputy Richard Boyd Barrett. Deputy Jean O'Kenny. Deputy Paul Murphy. Deputy Breed Smith. Deputy Cathal Berry. Deputy Sean Canny. Neil. Deputy Peter Fitzpatrick. Deputy Noel Grealish. Deputy Michael Lowry. Deputy Verona Murphy. Deputy Dennis Naughton. Deputy Matt Shanahan. Deputy Peadar Tobin. Deputy Michael Collins. Deputy Danny Healy-Rae. Deputy Michael Healy-Rae. Deputy Mattie McGrath. Deputy Carol Nolan. Deputy Richard O'Donoghue. Deputy Joan Collins. Deputy Michael Fitzmaurice. Deputy Marion Harkin. Deputy Michael McNamara. Deputy Thomas Pringle. Deputy Mark McSharry. Deputy Violet Ann Wynne. Neil.
Please come forward. Tellers, Moshe the Hella. That Dáil Éireann nominates Deputy Leo Varadkar for appointment by the President to be Taoiseach. Thorough result, Tá 87, yes 87, Níl 62, no 62. Sílam go bhfuil an cheist rite. Híshi nua cogorgegus agus guiam gafra ort either role nua. Híshi.
Mian Magat Lascan Corla, Wallam Buicus a Gawal about Dáil Éireann done honor war a hugshiv dominu. Disagum Gwillem Igdainov mar rinne, Nadini Iriglo an Adam nu mar Hishuk dun Darahor. Glacum Gahul, Leshan Amnacon Shaw. Bewar an honor dum Avet mar Hishuk, Agus Cade Blian mar Sta to Gamora Gwing. Cade Blino hin, Honig Ashling na Sirsha, Igriach Dorer, mar Bwinimer Sta to Gamach. Dahan on down or Navsblockus. The Carrot Germaic Shay, mar mission a going inish. Iraq the Yen of Carul and our dear, Gacown Cade Blian. Con the Fibana Tal Riv Winchin a Hair and a Ratig, Con Docus a Holohor Och a Will Egantocht, Agus A Docus. Alaskan Corla, I'm very proud of the state that was created 100 years ago under most extreme pressure. Throughout difficult crises and challenges, our democracy endured and survived and prospered. We won the ultimate freedom that all nations desire and develop to, as Michael Collins predicted, and we owe a debt to men and women of all political parties and all traditions. A crucial year in the history of our state was 1932, because that's when the wishes of the people were respected, the democratic principle was put ahead of all others, and there was a peaceful transfer of power. The coming together of Fine Gael Fianna Fáil in a shared government with the Green Party in 2020 was less significant, but was nonetheless another important moment in our history. Lascan Corla, I want to take this opportunity to commend Micheál Martin on the leadership that he showed as Taoiseach, for putting the country before politics and for providing reassurance and hope during difficult times. In 2020, the incoming Taoiseach was unable to have his wife and family with him at the convention centre as he received the greatest honour of his life. That too was leadership, and I'm really glad that they're with us today. During the pandemic, we all saw the best of each other, and it meant that the new coalition was born in a spirit of togetherness and hope. And I intend that spirit to continue as we implement with our partners in the Green Party the agreed programme for government. I'd also like to thank my family, friends and staff. Thank you for your work, your love and your support. When we enter public life, we choose that path. Our loved ones do not. And I want you to know that my work as Taoiseach is driven by your example, and I intend to honour your confidence in me. I also want to thank in particular my constituents in Dublin West for giving me the opportunity to serve as a TD and for electing me on 4 occasions. All of us, whether we're ministers or leaders or opposition spokespeople, know that our mandate ultimately derives from the people who vote for us on election day, and for that I remain eternally grateful. I also want to thank all of the deputies who supported my nomination, from Fine Gael, from Fianna Fáil, the Green Party and Independents. Leas-Cheann Comhairle, when I became Taoiseach in June 2017, so much of the focus was on my election and what it represented and symbolised. That was understandable at the time, but I think we should focus on where our country is now and what needs to be done as we prepare for our next century of statehood. Our history of the last 100 years has been about winning the additional freedoms that were denied to us or which we were unable to imagine at the time. Becoming a republic, becoming a place where you're not limited by your gender, religion, race, background or sexual orientation, becoming a country where you're free to be yourself. So what are the challenges for the next 100 years? We have many, and some of them we need to fix now. Otherwise, we will be betraying the current generation and the generations who come after us. I'm thinking particularly of housing and how we have to go all out to turn the corner on rising homelessness and falling home ownership. We need to accelerate our plan, Housing for All, making home ownership a reality for the many again. I'm thinking of how we need to tame inflation and bring the cost of living under control, especially when it comes to the cost of energy, childcare, education, rent and healthcare. I'm thinking about climate and biodiversity, the challenges facing our planet, and the need to set ourselves the ambition of becoming energy independent and develop the ideas and systems and mechanisms to make sure that happens. I believe we can harness our massive untapped renewable natural resources, providing greater energy security, stable prices, more jobs and regional development. I'm also thinking, as we all are, about the unprovoked war that has brought death and devastation to Ukraine. And today I reaffirm our commitment to stand with our fellow Europeans in this harsh winter and to help them in every way we possibly can. I'm thinking of the Defence Forces, the men and women who put the safety of others above their own, and in particular Private Sean Rooney. We offer our condolences to his fiancée, his family and his friends, and our thoughts and prayers are also with Trooper Shane Carney. We wish him a speedy recovery. I'm thinking of the Good Friday Agreement of nearly 25 years ago. Fundamental elements of that agreement, the Assembly and the Executive, are still suspended. Ceann Comhairle, or rather Leas-Cheann Comhairle, dreams of a better future are not built on stalemate and status quo. And I want to work with all parties in this House and in Northern Ireland, as well as the British Government and our partners in the European Union, to make progress on the protocol and to restore the institutions of the agreement. I'm also thinking of the most vulnerable in our society, and especially children. We need to improve access to therapies, provide better special needs education, and do more for those who need it the most. We also need to do more about child poverty and disadvantage. We know that poverty restricts a child's opportunity and casts a long shadow over their lives. The number of children experiencing consistent poverty has fallen by 45,000. We are making progress, but it still means that too many children are missing out on the everyday opportunities they deserve. I'll speak more about these matters later on. Leas-Cheann Comhairle, Ireland has never been a failed state, and it is grotesque and dishonest to claim that we are or ever were. But we are failing some of our citizens, and it's essential to our success as a country that we spend the next 2 years doing all we can to put this right. In 8 days' time, most homes around the country will celebrate Christmas with presents and good cheer. Most, but not all. For some families, for some children, Christmas is a time of fear and uncertainty and a time of great unhappiness. The greatest resource of any country is its people. So let's try to make sure that all our people have a fair chance, starting with our youngest, their health, continuing with their education, staying with our young people until they're able to create the future they want, providing them with the stepping stones to their ultimate freedom. Our ambition is to make Ireland the best country in Europe in which to be a child. As Taoiseach, my mission will be to build on the achievement of 100 years ago and to work on what needs to be done for this generation and the next, providing hope and housing, economic opportunities and a fair start for all. And so I accept this nomination by the Dáil with humility and resolve, with a burning desire to make good the promise of 100 years ago and provide new hope and new opportunities for all of our citizens. Gur míle maith.
Inis tá an si ar fionraí go dtí 10 tar éis a cuaig. Gur míle maith.